and crossed over into Massachusetts. "So what are we doing here, John?" I finally broke the ice on the subject. "Chasing the bad guy, same as always," he said. "Nothing's changed, has it? Guy's a killer, a rapist. You're the dragon slayer. I'm along for the ride. Just me and you, huh? No call to the local police? No FBI in on this? You know we just crossed a state line." Samson nodded. "I figure this time it's personal. Am I wrong about that? Plus, he deserves to die if it comes to that, which it just might. Probably will. It's personal, all right. It's never been more personal. This has been bubbling over for a long time. It needs to end, but no buts, Alex. We need to put an end to him." We rode along in silence for another few miles. But I had to talk this out a little more with Samson. We had to set some kind of rules of engagement. "I'm not going to just take him out. If he's up here, I'm not a vigilante, John." "I know that," said Samson. "I know who you are, Alex, if anybody does. Let's see how it plays. Maybe he's not even here." We arrived in the town of Florida, Massachusetts, at around 2 that afternoon. Then we went looking for the house where we hoped to find Michael Sullivan once and for all. I could feel the tension really building inside me now. It took us another half hour to locate the place, which was built on the side of a mountain overlooking a river. We watched the house, and nobody seemed to be there. Had someone tipped off Sullivan again? If it had happened, who would have done it? The FBI? Was he in witness protection after all? Was the FBI watching his back? Were they the ones who told him we might be coming for him? We drove into the town center and had lunch at a Denny's. Samson and I didn't talk much over our eggs and potatoes, which was unusual for us. "You all right?" he finally asked, once the coffee had arrived. "If we get him, I'll be better. This has to end, though. You're right about that." "Then let's go do it." We went back to the house, and at a little past 5, a station wagon turned into the drive and parked right in front of the porch. Was this him, finally? The butcher? 3 boys piled out of the back. Then a pretty dark-haired woman got out of the driver's side. It was obvious that she and the boys got along well. They roughhoused on the front lawn. Then they trooped inside the house. I had a picture of Caitlin Sullivan with me, but I didn't need to look at it. "That's definitely her," I told Samson. "We're in the right place this time. That's Caitlin and the butcher's boys." "He'll spot us if we stay here," Samson said. "This isn't cops, and he's no dumb crackhead waiting to be caught." "Yeah, I'm counting on it," I said. Chapter 111.
Michael Sullivan wasn't anywhere near the house in western Massachusetts. At 7:30 that night, he entered a 10-bedroom home in Wellesley, a wealthy suburb outside Boston. He was a few steps behind Melinda Steiner, who had long legs and a sweet little tush to watch. Melinda knew it, too. She also understood how to be subtle, and, at the same time, nicely provocative with her wiggle walk. A light was on in one of the rooms off the wide front hallway, which had 3 chandeliers in a courtly procession, courtesy of Melinda, or her decorator, no doubt. "Sweetie, I'm home," Melinda called out as she dropped her travel bag loudly on the highly polished floor. Not a hint of anything wrong in her voice, no alarm or warning, no edge, nothing but wifely bonhomie. "She's pretty damn good," Sullivan couldn't help thinking to himself. "Glad I'm not married to her." No greeting came back from the room where the TV was on. Not a peep. "Honey," she called again. "You in there? Honey, I'm home from the country, Jerry." This ought to surprise the bastard for sure. "Honey, I'm home. Honey, I'm still alive." A fatigued-looking man in a wrinkled pinstripe dress shirt, boxer shorts, and electric blue flip-flops finally appeared in the doorway. Now, he's a pretty good actor, too. Like, nothing in the whole wide world could be wrong. Until right about now, when he sees the butcher walking stride for stride behind his beloved wife, whom he's just tried to murder at their country house. "Hey, you! Who is this, Mel? What's going on? Jerry asked as he saw Sullivan standing there in the hallway. The butcher already had his gun out, and it was pointed at the guy in his underwear, aimed at his balls. But then Sullivan moved it up to the heart, if the conniving bastard had one. Murder your wife? What kind of cold shit was that? Change of plans, Sullivan said. What can I tell you? It happens. The husband, Jerry, put his hands up in the air without being asked. He was also coming wide awake, in kind of a big hurry. What are you talking about? What is this, Mel? Why is this man in our house? Who the hell is he? A classic line, and a dynamite delivery. Now it was Melinda's turn to say her piece, and she decided to shout her answer. He's the one who was supposed to kill me, Jerry. You paid to have me murdered, you miserable piece of shit. You are total worthless garbage, and you're a coward, too. So I paid him more to have you hit. That's what this is, honey. I guess you could call him a switch hitter, she said, and laughed at her own joke. Nobody else did. Not Jerry, and not Sullivan. It was kind of funny, actually, but not laugh-out-loud funny. Or maybe her delivery was wrong. A touch too harsh. A little too much of the truth in it. The husband jumped back into the TV room and tried to pull shut the door, but it wasn't even a contest. The butcher was quick and had a foot, a work boot, wedged in the doorway. Then he put his shoulder to it and followed Jerry right inside. Jerry, the original contractor, was a tall, pot-bellied CEO or CFO type dude who was balding up top. The den smelled of his body odor and a cigar smoldering in an ashtray by the couch. A 2-ball putter and a couple of Titleist spheroids lay on the rug. A man's man, this guy who had paid to have his wife killed and now was practicing his putting to show he didn't have the yips. I'll pay you more than she can, Jerry squealed. Whatever that bitch paid, I'll double it. I swear to God, the money's there. It's yours. Wow. This is getting better and better, thought Sullivan. It brought new meaning to a game like Jeopardy or Let's Make a Deal. You total piece of crap, Melinda snarled at her husband from the doorway. Then she ran in and smacked him in the chops. Sullivan still thought that she was a cool lady in a lot of ways, though not in some others. He looked at the husband again. Then he looked at Melinda. Interesting couple, to be sure. I agree with Melinda, said the butcher. But Jerry does have a point, Mel. Maybe we should have a little auction here. You think? Let's talk this out like adults. No more hitting or name-calling.
Chapter 112.
2 hours later, the auction was complete, and Michael Sullivan was driving on the Massachusetts Turnpike in his Lexus. The car could move reasonably well, and the ride was smooth as a baby's ass. Or maybe he was just feeling good. There were a few loose details to work out, but the job was done. Let's Make a Deal had netted him $350,000, all of it wired into an account at the Union Bank of Switzerland. Truth be told, he hadn't felt this financially secure in a while, though he'd probably burned his Boston contact for the job. Maybe he'd have to move the family again, too. Or maybe it was time for him to break free and set off on his own, something he'd been thinking about a lot. It was probably worth it, $350,000 for a day's work. Jerry Steiner had been the winning bidder, but then he tapped the dumb, obnoxious bastard anyway. Melinda was a different story. He liked her. He didn't want to hurt her. But what choice did he have? Leave her around to talk? So he made it painless, one to the back of Mel's head, then a couple of pictures to memorialize her pretty face for his collection. Anyway, he was singing a Stones ballad that he always liked, Wild Horses, when he came around the bend in the road. There was his house on the hill, right where he'd left it. And what the hell was this? Mistake? But whose mistake? He shut off his headlights around the next little crook in the road. Then he eased into a cul-de-sac where he had a better view of his house and the grounds. Man, he couldn't catch a break lately. Couldn't outrun his past no matter how far away he went. He'd spotted them right away in a dark blue car, maybe a Dodge with a grill pointed toward the house like a gun. 2 men inside that he could see, waiting for him. No doubt about that. Mistake. Theirs. But who the hell were these 2 guys he had to kill now?
Chapter 113.
Well, it didn't much matter. They were 2 dead men. Dead over nothing. Dead because they were miserable screw-ups at their jobs. Dead men watching his house come to kill him and his family. Sullivan had a 3-year-old Winchester in the trunk of the car, which he kept cleaned, oiled, and ready to go. He popped the trunk, took out the long gun, then he loaded it up with hollow points. He didn't quite have the skills to be an army sniper, but he was plenty good enough for this kind of bushwhacking. He set up in the woods between a couple of tall, fluffy evergreens that provided a canopy of extra cover. Then he took a quick look through the night scope. It had a bullseye rather than a sight post, which was the way he liked it. Actually, it was Jimmy Hatz who had taught him to be a long-distance marksman. Jimmy had been trained at Fort Bragg in North Carolina before his dishonorable discharge. He let the bullseye rest right on the driver's head, and he lightly touched the trigger with his finger. This was going to be easy. Not a problem for him. Then he shifted his aim to the head of the guy in the passenger seat. Whoever these 2 were, they were definitely DOA. As soon as it was over, he'd have to gather up the family and boogie on out of here. No contact again with their past. That was the mistake, wasn't it? Somebody from ancient history they had kept in contact with? Maybe Caitlin's family in New Jersey. Somebody had probably tracked a phone call. He'd bet anything that's what had happened. Mistake, mistake, mistake. And Caitlin would keep making them, wouldn't she? Which meant Caitlin had to go. He didn't want to think too much about it, but Caitlin was a goner too. Unless he just took off by himself. Lots of decisions to make, not much time to make them. He set the bullseye back on the driver's head. He was ready for 2 shots, and both men in the car were dead. They just didn't know it yet. He slowly let out a breath until his body was calm and still and ready to do this. He had a sense of his own heartbeat, slow, steady, confident. Slow, steady, confident. Then he pulled the trigger and heard a sharp, satisfying crack in the night air. An instant later, he pulled the rifle's trigger a 2nd time, then a 3rd and a 4th time. That should do it. The killing was done, and he had to get the hell out of here, pronto, with or without Caitlin and the boys. But first, he needed to know who he'd just killed, and maybe take some pictures of the deceased.
Chapter 114. Sampson and I watched the butcher approach the car. He was being stealthy, all right, but maybe he wasn't as good as he thought he was. He moved in quickly, bent low in a shooting crouch, ready for resistance if it came. He was about to find out that he'd shot up a pile of propped-up clothes and throw pillows from the local Walmart. Sampson and I were crouched in the woods, less than 30 yards behind the car he'd just ambushed. So who was better at this game? The butcher or us? Your call, Alex. How it goes from here, Sampson whispered out of the side of his mouth. Don't kill him, John, I said, and touched Sampson's arm. Unless we have to. Just take him down. Your call, Sampson repeated. Then everything went a little crazy, to put it mildly. Suddenly the butcher whirled around, but not in our direction. The opposite way. What the hell was this? What was happening now? Sullivan was facing the thick row of woods to the east, not where Sampson and I were coming from. He was paying no attention to us now. He fired off 2 quick shots, and I heard somebody grunt in the distance. A man dressed in black appeared for an instant, then he fell to the ground. Who was it? Then 5 more men came running out of the woods to the north. They had handguns, bullpups, 1 Uzi that I could make out. Who were these guys? As if to answer the question, one of them shouted, FBI! Drop your weapon! FBI! I didn't buy it.